Welcome to the Total Saints podcast. Unlike the usual podcast format that we do, this is going to be a more informal chat about things going on in the close season. We're going to try and do these on an ad hoc basis when there's something to talk about. And since we last posted anything, there's been a bit going on that we feel like we need to discuss. So first up, the signing of a new right back, and I'm going to try and pronounce it vaguely correctly. Yukinari Sugawara has arrived from AZ Alkmaar for approximately 7 million. We've had hits and misses from the Dutch league before, and it kind of mitigates Kyle Walker-Peters leaving, I guess. For me, from his interviews, he seems like another charming, well-spoken Japanese player. So, Alfie, first, what's your take on this move, and what do you know about it?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up pretty well, actually. He's clearly an attacking player. When you look at what he's done in his career so far, he's a right back. He's only 24 years old, so he's obviously got a lot of potential to grow even further. But you look at his stats from last season, and he's top in the sort of next 14 men's competitions in Europe, so not the top 5 leagues. He's top for goals, assists, passes into the final third. But he's actually really low down on defensive work in tackles and blocks and stuff like that. So he's clearly an attacking fullback, and I think that maybe it lends itself to Martin playing free at the back, which we've discussed. He'd be as a wing back. He'd more be entering the opposition half than anything else. But I think for 7 million, 6 million quid, whatever it is, I think it's a good buy. You mentioned the Eredivisie, and yeah, you do have to be careful because it's obviously an easier league than the Premier League. But I think having done this business before the future of Kyle Walker-Peters is settled, who obviously is still here at the moment, but has got 12 months left on his contract. And Russell Martin has said that ideally nobody leaves next year for free. We've had it with Che Adams this season. We've had it with Stu. They may look to sell him. They may look to cash in on him. Obviously, fingers crossed they don't. But to have that player who's already in there already, I think is a big boost. You mentioned his mentality and character. And look, we can only see from a couple of interviews. But he's got Maya Yoshida's backing, who obviously we all respect a lot. And without sort of slipping into stereotypes, you do get the players from the Japanese national team. They have a real work ethic and they have a real a mentality to try and give everything for the club. So I'm really positive about this signing. I think it's someone that a lot of the younger generation would have watched some clips and stuff of. I hadn't heard of him myself until we signed, but yeah, I think it's really positive.
Yeah, it kind of, with Kyle still being here, it kind of leaves us very well stocked in fullback. In the fullback area. I mean, Steve, what do you make of that situation in general? I'm talking about both the right and the left hand side.
Yeah, I mean, we do. Yeah, we've certainly got plentiful stocks now all of a sudden, haven't we? Whereas at one point last season we were kind of thinking, well, who the hell is actually going to play at right back? And it ended up being Jack Stevens. So at least we shouldn't be in that situation this coming season, which is obviously a bonus. But yeah, I think ultimately you can't have enough quality in depth. And what's been noticeable is how basically all of our spending so far this summer has been on defensive signings and strengthening and reinforcements. So we've obviously now got 3 left backs, I guess, if we include Taylor, Larios, and Manning, with, by the sound of it, this Brazilian lad Wellington due to come in either in January on a free, or if we can accelerate that deal sometime this summer. He looks very promising from what little I've managed to read up on him. And you would assume that probably means that Manning and or Larios are likely to be further down the pecking order and may end up being kind of sacrificial lambs, I suppose, being moved on elsewhere. I guess we'll wait and see as and when those deals are possibly done. But on the right hand side, I mean, you've now got two full internationals at right back, which is perfect, really. Both good going forward. Not quite sure what Sugawara's defensive attributes are like. I mean, as Alfie says, the rankings aren't hugely positive, but then playing for AZ Alkmaar, they're in the sort of upper reaches of the league most seasons. So actually, how much defending does he have to do?
He's going to have to do some next year.
Well, yeah, that'll be a learning curve, and we saw when Yoshida first came in, that was a hell of a learning sort of step up for him, and it was a bit of a struggle initially. But it's difficult to know whether we're a stronger team coming up this season than we were in 2012. I kind of feel like while the current squad has got a lot more experience in the Premier League, I think that older squad, the squad with the sort of Lamberts and Lallanas and Schneiderlins and people like that, just felt like a more well-rounded squad. I think this currently we're a little bit of a mishmash at the moment.
There's work to be done. There's a lot.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think ultimately the heavy lifting is going to be done by attacking signings. And yeah, I mean, we wait and see how that kind of transpires over the coming weeks. But defensively, yeah, I mean, we've brought in a lot of cover, a lot of options, and we haven't really spent that much. Harwood Bellis was obviously the big spend at 18, 20 million, whatever the number was. But we knew that was going to be the case a year ago. All the others have been kind of newly negotiated, and I mean to get the two lads from Peterborough and Swansea for 3 million apiece. That feels extraordinarily low. So that hopefully then frees up a bit of cash for strengthening in the attacking areas, and yeah, we'll see where we go. I mean, hopefully it doesn't need to be we're only going to spend £6 million on a half broken Danny Ings, getting the old band back together. But we'll see on that. I think there's I'd like to think there's better options out there, wouldn't you? Especially with the scouting, it's not going to be a case of, well, we know him, so therefore let's just do it.
A couple of interesting things about Sugawara before we just round that off. He played for the same Japanese league team as Mai Yoshida 6 or 7 years ago, and then Yoshida also went to the Dutch league before coming to Saints. So they have trodden a very similar path. And I think a lot of us, I don't know if you guys were at the AZ game last season, but he actually played against Saints at St Mary's.
Oh, okay.
I think he made a terrible tackle on Samadozi in the box that went unpunished. So he might have to apologise for that. One of the first things he did. But it's weird how you just see players at St Mary's and you obviously have no idea who they are. You don't clock it, but then here he is a year later, and he's our player.
Good stuff. Now, moving on. On Tuesday, we were lucky enough to be invited to the Saints and Puma kit launch event. Absolutely. I gather we were all on the live stream looking very awkward, judging by the amount of piss take I found on my phone as soon as I looked after that. So the entrance to the Mick Shannon suite was done out like a nightclub, and Steve, you made a comment about Icon and Diva as we walked in, and whilst we don't want to talk about your nightclub glory days, what did you make of the whole event in general?
Yeah, I mean it was well put on, I thought. I mean, you can never kind of argue with a free bar either. That was very, very nice touch. But no, it was well put on, and it was good. They got both the first team squads heavily involved. Obviously, you had the sort of official unveiling of Flynn Downs as a permanent signing, which was obviously an unexpected bonus. That was quite cool. And yeah, I mean the fact that the players, I mean, obviously they were very clearly told, right, you're here for at least a couple of hours. Make yourself useful and allow people to have photos and have a chat and all this sort of stuff, and don't do anything stupid.
Some definitely looked happier than others, didn't they?
Oh, very much so. But it's at the end of the day, it's one of those things. There's 100 odd people in the room, and it was kind of intimate without being awkward, I think. And obviously they had that little pop-up shop, so they were certainly making the most of it commercially as well, giving those people the opportunity to sort of get an exclusive sort of on day of unveiling purchase. But yeah,
before we get on to
60
the
quid is still a fair fair whack, isn't it?
It's steep, isn't it? Before we get on to the Flynn Downs stuff, I'll do my finest Kenzie Benali impression here and do what she did with absolutely everybody and ask what you think of the new kits, Alfie.
Yeah, well, look, it's obviously a tough question for them to answer, isn't it? Because they can't exactly turn around and say, "Oh, I hate it." I think the first thing I would say is I think I'm pleased for the marketing team and for whoever works for the club that they managed to get through to 30 minutes before the release without a leak. Because I think every other season I've been here, they've had it leaked at least a few days in advance. Obviously, Lianco did one of them last season, and you do always feel for them a little bit because they put a lot of work into it. And it was only one picture from the club shop that actually got leaked about 30 minutes before the event. Otherwise, it would have been a clean sweep. But I think the kits are actually quite nice. I think I like the away one. I like the pattern. I think it's good yellow. I do like the fact that it's gone back to red and white stripes. Excuse me. I think that's important. Obviously, I think we're going to get onto the fact. I think the only bit I don't like on it is I don't think the sponsor looks very good. I'm going to be totally honest. But other than that, I think they've done a good job. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed.
Is that the sponsor doesn't look good because of the font or the lettering or whatever, or is it just because what the sponsor represents? I mean, it's a bit of an elephant in the room, isn't it? This one. I mean, from a personal point of view, I looked at the kit, like the red and white kits, for example, and you had the men's kit, the women's kit, which is sponsored by Starling Bank, and the
kids.
sort of like kids and youth kit, which is sponsored by Utilita, I believe.
Yeah.
And just from an aesthetic point of view, the other two kits look better, didn't they? So I'm going to drop you in it with this one, Steve. The roll bit, the roll bit sponsorship. What do we make of that?
Suboptimal, shall we say?
Good word.
Yeah, I mean, look. At the end of the day, the problem with modern day football, especially at the top level, where you have all of this regulatory nonsense with the profit and sustainability rules, whereby you can only spend what you earn and sustain certain levels of losses with owner investment. I think ultimately the clubs of our size are backed into a corner whereby you can either take the sort of proper sort of ethical route and say, no, we are not going to be taking the extra money on offer from gambling or crypto or anyone in that sort of sphere. But then you basically then know that you're losing out on probably £2.5 million in guaranteed revenue from that sponsorship, because no other industry is paying the same amount that these industries are paying. That's unfortunately, that is a fact. And unless we were able to find a sponsor that was happy to match whatever Rollbit are paying, I believe somewhere in the region of about £6 million a year for the next 2 years, then unless you can find someone who's more of a sort of brand that I think equals the club's values or whatever, however you want to term it, then it's one of those. I think you've basically just got to hold your nose and get on with it. Unfortunately, because ultimately people want the football club and the team on the pitch to be successful, and there is a strong correlation between your wage bill and your league position. Unfortunately, it is largely as simple as, if you've got a bigger wage bill, you will finish higher in the league. Unfortunately, so
and it's also very clear, isn't it, Steve, at the moment that betting sponsors are going to be banned in 2 years' time, and this is a 2-year deal to ultimately maximise on the potential until it moves away. But we were speaking to some people who were there at the night, and they also made it quite clear, and it is pretty obvious that it's banned on the front of the shirt, but betting sponsors are simply going to move up to the other parts of the shirt, like the back of the shirt or the sleeves and stuff as well. So I do think that it's one of those, isn't it? The betting. I mean, Sky Bet Championship, Sky Bet League One, Sky Bet League Two, for Christ's sake. So I think they're gonna struggle to completely eradicate this, and I'm sort of on the same side as you in that sort of maximising that commercial capability at the moment is probably the most important thing to Saints, and that's why they've made the decision.
Yeah. So perhaps maximising the commercial revenue from that has has allowed the big surprise of the day. Well, it wasn't really a surprise because Alfie knew about it, but he didn't tell anyone. He didn't tell us anyway that Flynn Downs was going to make an appearance on the catwalk, modelling a new kit. So, Alfie, how did that sort of play out for you on Tuesday? You obviously knew before us, so how did it all unfold to you?
Yeah, I didn't know too much before you, but I think it was a brilliant surprise. It probably made the night a bit more special for everybody there because, I think it's a great idea to bring people into the club, but ultimately you're just bringing out humans to stand there and be stared at like animals, and then you've got a curtain dropping, and there's 6 more humans behind it, and it's like, oh, okay, you're there, and we're all staring at you now. It's a little bit strange, but I think bringing Flynn in made it, quite a natural sort of oh wow moment. And it's a brilliant signing. We know how important he was last year. 18 million quid, I think, is the reported fee, and he's worth every penny of that, I think, to this team. To get it done, I think we were speaking before we came on air that, Steve said a couple of weeks ago on the podcast that you need to either have Flynn Downs in place or somebody who is as good as him and plays that role, because we know how important it is. And they've got him in before the first game of pre-season. So he's now got 6 weeks to I say acclimatise. He's already acclimatised, but 6 weeks to work. He's Southampton's player again. He's also a great lad, and I saw his interview we did with a couple of people, Lewis Coombs from BBC, and he's somebody who's obviously honest. He's got good integrity. He's a top player, so really good signing. I think they only arranged that surprise about 5 o'clock that night, so about 2 or 3 hours later, he was there at St Mary's, and he was walking out in the brand new kit. So yeah, good effort to the club for that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was whilst we kind of suspected that it was going to happen because the reports had come out the other day about the fee being agreed with West Ham, and which was always going to be the major stumbling block in that move happening. But I mean, for me personally, I don't know about you, Steve, it just makes me feel a whole lot better about things, because I was really worried we were going to go into the season with actually a worse team than we had last year.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been basically what Burnley did last season, wasn't it? In terms of they had a team that got themselves promoted based on 4 or 5 key loan players who were more or less playing every week for them. Nathan Teller, of course, being one of them. And then obviously once the summer comes around, they're not able to convert any of those into permanent deals. Obviously, we've got Harwood Bellis over the line. We've now got Downs over the line. I mean, you look back at that Burnley team, and I mean, it's incredible some of the players they actually had in that championship winning side. Ian Matson, who ended up playing in the Champions League final. Nathan Teller, who wins the Bundesliga. And it's just like absolutely mad that they were able to get those on loan in the championship.
Harwood Bellis as well, of course.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that there was certainly a concern that we'd be actually kicking off the season against Nottingham Forest weaker than the team that won at Wembley. But I think Downs and Harwood Bellis now being kind of the spine of this team, I think we're now kind of on the way. And I think, once we start making some attacking moves, then hopefully we'll be
things looking good.
The excitement will ramp up a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, just my thoughts on the whole event. I thought there was an overall sort of good feeling, good vibe, if you like, about the club being in good hands. I thought everyone who went up on stage to speak, it was Russell Martin, Remy Allen, the new women's manager, and Henrik Kraft, all spoke well. And I know they're quite professional at this sort of thing, so they're not going to say anything sort of like controversial, but they just seem like people who know what they're doing to me. I thought overall it was nice to see the women's and men's squads given sort of equal billing at the event. There was, it was everyone in this together, which was nice. And the men's kit goes up to 6XL apparently, so that's good for me and other overweight middle-aged blokes like me. It does look better up close than what it does in the pictures as well. So I
think it's also a looser fit than Puma kits have been in the past, isn't it? I think people were worried that it was going to be like a slim, athletic fit, but I do think it actually it wears well on anybody.
I must say I'm disappointed they didn't go for the old Cameroon idea of a one-piece sort of shirt and shorts combo just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, that look great on people my age, I'm sure. But But yeah, I mean, I've had a bit of feedback from people saying that they're going to buy the biggest possible. These are blokes saying they're going to buy the biggest possible women's size because it looks better. Apparently, the women's kits pinch in at the waist a little bit more. But so
yeah, I mean they're more kind of that fitted style, aren't they? So
more fitted, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for guys like us who have got man boobs, maybe that works, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I assume that the women's shirt won't be available in men's sizes, because I think the club have probably worked out that was what people are going to do. But we'll see.
Right. Okay. Is there anything else to talk about, or is that it for now?
Well, I think we just sort of, I suppose, what we need to just think about is, what comes next. I think we've already touched on the fact that the defence is pretty much sorted now. I'd like to think, is Charlie Taylor can play 2 different positions. You've got 5 centre backs. You've got 2 right backs. So you've got Flynn Downs, but we are still missing that key ingredient that we know is going to go probably to the end of the transfer window, because it always does, and that's a centre forward and maybe an attacking midfielder as well.
I know another thing. When the players were revealed, of course, we were looking to see who was there and who wasn't. Now, the only person I can think of who wasn't there was Tall Paul, who's still technically our player, of course, but Armel Bella-Kotchap was there. Charlie Alcaraz was there. Those are 2 interesting futures to be decided. Jan Bednarek wasn't, because
he's
I assume he's
still
international, having a holiday sort of thing. So there's still question marks there. Where does anyone, either of you, see the Bella-Kotchap Bednarek thing going?
Well, I think we've obviously seen reports in The Athletic this week that Charlie Alcaraz has expressed his interest to stay at the club, which I think is good for the club. I saw a couple of different people who spoke to Charlie on the night, and both of them said the same thing, and they were separate groups. They both said that they asked him if he was staying, and he said, I hope so, but you need to ask the manager. So, I don't know if he's just saying that because he doesn't speak much English and he's trying to get out of it or what, but, it sounds like it's going to be Russell Martin's choice whether he's here or not.
That's a very specific phrase for him to have learned if he's not fluent in English.
That's very true. So, maybe his future's actually not up to him, and maybe it's up to the manager, and it's up to whether Russell thinks they can either loan him out or sell him for some money and then buy somebody who he thinks fits the system better or is more ready. So that's one to watch.
We do need another midfielder, don't we, when you look at it? Because it's Downs, Charles, Aribo, Smallbone, Lallana. That's basically what we've got at the moment, if you don't include Alcaraz. So
Dibbling, maybe.
Yeah, well, Tyler Dibbling and Sam Ammo are the only 2 youngsters who were at the event, and I'm pretty sure they're going to go to Spain this weekend as well. So I think it looks like those 2 are the youngsters who are going to be part of the first team this pre-season.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's it. Hope everyone enjoyed this little catch up, and keep an eye on the socials and stuff, and we'll